Today, we are once again talking about this absolute mess that was the launch of Rick Probstein's website Snype, because his allegations around the data breach have become even more damning since the last time we spoke about this. I've had 3 people reach out to me to give some substance to the fact that this data looks very much legitimate, and some more posts have been made on the forum post that we referenced in the original video, as well as Sports Card Radio consolidating some data. It does not make this whole situation look very good. I also want to talk about it because I want to focus in on the data breach itself, because if this is in fact true, there's huge ramifications here from a GDPR perspective, which I'll get through in a second, that goes far beyond the whole shill bidding and fraud that's associated with this case as well. If you're sitting back and thinking this is a non-issue, go look back at sort of the whole Bill Mastro shill bidding situation. This is that on steroids. So I want to unpack this because I think there's not enough people talking about this, including your favorite hobby heroes. It's been literally silent, including silence from Rick and his team. You know, I would have thought, had this situation been black and white fake news, they would have come out and said something by now. But the silence is bloody deafening. It also looks like Rick has left Instagram. His page isn't there anymore. So I want to talk through that as well, because this whole thing is a mess, and this thing needs to be kept front of mind, because if legitimate, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to this industry, because it's incredibly systematic, it's pervasive, and then would raise a heck of a lot of questions around his whole tenure on eBay selling cards as well. So, you know, stay with me. This one's going to be a bit long, so I do apologize, but I want to try and, you know, talk through it, and you guys can share your thoughts down in the comments below as always. Now, if you're not sure, you know, what I'm referring to, it is this video over here that I put out 2 days ago talking about the fact that there looked like there was some data breach and data leaks from Rick Probstein's website Snype that seemed to indicate shill bidding was going on from Rick, family members of Rick, as well as people associated with him in the past, as well as alleged sports card scammers that were noted and called out by Sports Card Radio over the years. This thing was crazy, and I spoke about that in this video in particular. One of the things that was most damning with the whole situation was some of the data that was actually leaked, and not a lot of people are focusing in on that in terms of the personally identifiable information, things like names, date of birth, etc. But the data itself looks incredibly, you know, sketchy and shocking. There's no better way to say it. It indicates that people like Rick and family members or associated with him appeared to be shill bidding on the items on his auction. Now, Sports Card Radio have done a good job consolidating this information. They've talked about a few things in the last few days around people trying to justify Rick's accounts that were caught in this alleged data breach. And they were simply saying that this was done early on and they were test accounts. But what the data seems to suggest is that he actually won some auctions in the closing days of the website before it got taken down. So that raises a lot of eyebrows. You know, one of the things I spoke about in my last video was, you know, if this website was designed so poorly, could somebody have gone through and created fake accounts using Rick's email, and then they've gone ahead and done this to sort of destabilize his business? But what the data seems to show is that these accounts were created within days of the website launching, and they also had a super bidder status tied to them. And I sort of spoke about it in the last video. I didn't really know what the super bidder status actually meant, but it's an approval process. You can't just get it and then be done. They actually have to approve you and vet you to become a super bidder. So the fact that these accounts were created early on and also had super bidder status and bid on a shit ton of auctions and appeared to be shilling auctions and were tied to Rick and family members of him, that's incredibly damning, and I think needs to be super emphasized here, because people are sort of dismissing it. And I know I sort of did in my last video, because I found it so far-fetched that this data leak could be true. I sort of said, this is so brazen that it doesn't make sense that this could actually happen, because how dumb could you be? You leave eBay, you want to commit shill bidding, and then you sort of leave the back door open for yourself to get caught. That's insane to me. And it's so insane that I didn't think it was possible. But people have reached out to me and they've reviewed the data, and they've said the data very much looks legitimate. They can't verify the information themselves because they can't re-extract it because the website's been taken down. But they've said the way the website appears to be structured right now, they can still see some things with, you know, some back doors open there. But they've said the data very much looks legitimate. It looks like you'd expect if what the person in this original forum post is saying is true. So they're saying with all these things that are being mentioned here, it very much looks legitimate. Now, this is obviously still allegations at this stage. Somebody could have made a fake data leak to sort of destabilize Rick. But like I sort of said in that intro, at least I think I did, we've heard nothing from them. You know, I would have thought if this data was in fact fake, you would have seen them come out by now and say, hey, this is all fake. What are you guys talking about? This, and this is the reason why this didn't happen. We can prove it. Here's the proof. But the fact that we've heard nothing is insane to me. The fact that the website is still down and there's no updated comment is insane to me. The fact that Rick is not on the front foot talking about this is insane to me. It appears his Instagram page was taken down. I thought I was blocked. I checked it from somebody else's account, and no, the page isn't there. I don't know when this was taken down. I don't know if it was weeks ago, months ago. But, you know, as of right now, his page is not there. So maybe some of you guys can confirm if he disappeared a while ago. But the fact that he's nowhere to be seen is insane. Like, and I've said insane a few times now, but this thing is mental. Like, I don't think people are appreciating how big this news would actually be if these allegations are true. And obviously, like I said, we cannot verify that this data leak is legitimate because we can't re-perform it ourselves. But people have independently reached out to me and said the data looks legitimate. Now, they can't re-perform it, like I just said. But the fact that you've got all these accounts tied to Rick, and they were created within days of the website launching, and they had super bidder status, and they've bid on all these items, makes you think, if this is legitimate, that's unquestionable. Because even in my last video, I sort of said, well, could somebody have bypassed the security and made these accounts because the website was designed like dog shit, and they went ahead and done this and they didn't get noticed? But when you're looking at the bidding activity that was highlighted on this forum post over here, where you'll see some of these accounts have bid so much, right? This Honey Bunny one over here is tied to Rick. He bid $250,000 and bid on thousands of items, I think it was, if I remember correctly. You know, they would have noticed that, surely. So they would have deleted those accounts. So if this data is legitimate and these accounts made it all the way to winning actual auctions, there's almost no excuse. So either they are incompetent and they didn't notice this shit, or they knew it was happening because they were the ones doing it. And I think that needs to be emphasized because this thing is just wild. I'm shocked that no one is talking about it. You know, when I say no one, I mean, obviously myself, I've talked about it. Sports Card Radio have talked about it. They're coming out and doing another live stream to highlight this. AIH Sports has talked about it. I saw people like Professor Sports Cards quickly highlight it. I haven't seen his video in detail, but I did see him talk about it. So the fact that this is, you know, this huge and no one in the mainstream is highlighting it is ridiculous. Like, Collect Darren Vell hasn't talked about this from what I can see. You know, Dustin, the Sports Card Dad, who had Rick on 4 or 5 times in the last month alone, hasn't said a peep. Like, if we go to his channel here, there is one over here from 10 days ago, one from a month ago, talked about it a month ago as well, had Rick on 3 weeks ago, looks like he had him on a month ago. This is insane. Like, why aren't you talking about it? You're happy to take the dude's money, and then all this stuff pops off, and you don't have an obligation to sort of say, hey, you know, this needs to be fixed. Maybe Dustin didn't take money, but I'm pretty sure he had an affiliate link, so maybe I'm wrong on that, so I apologize if that is the case. But still, the fact that he said nothing is insane to me, and there's nothing in the last couple of days either. He talks about the fact that it went offline, but not about the shill bidding or the data leak. Now, in that intro, I spoke about, you know, the data breach component, because what the original poster has highlighted and what the data does show is that you've got people's full names, phone numbers, emails, date of births, addresses leaked, as well as their bidding information and their links to eBay. But the things that are, you know, paramount here are things like date of birth, emails, and the names, because if this information is leaked and that's now been obtained by people looking to do nefarious things, they can do a lot of damage with this information, and not enough people are highlighting that. And I think I said in the intro, people based in the UK or EU, they're quite protective with their, you know, regulations around this sort of stuff. And it's called GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation. And there are significant, you know, issues and fines that can happen off the back of these kinds of breaches. And you might say, well, Rick's based in the US, what does this matter? If you're a company based internationally and you want to sort of open your services to people in the EU or in the UK, you're obliged to now be compliant with this information. And now that this has been leaked and you've sort of not done anything to protect it, and you've allegedly designed a website where this information could be obtained and downloaded, you've not, you know, encrypted it, you've not stored it in a private database, you've made it publicly accessible, is a huge problem. And this in of alone, if it's true, is going to get him into hot water, and you're going to see fines. I don't think you see jail time off the back of this, but you will see some fairly significant fines, including potentially even being banned from opening up to servicing customers internationally. So obviously, if you're somebody that's, you know, aware of this, go ahead and sort of drop down in the comments below more information that I sort of dropped out there. But if you're not aware of this, go ahead and read it, because this is a huge problem. And like I said, if this data is legitimate and it was in fact taken from the website, you're seeing something here that we've probably never seen in this industry before. And it's almost to the point where you'd expect someone like the FBI to be involved. And some people will sit back and say, well, the auction was closed before these things could finish. You can clearly see here that the data is suggesting that, you know, Honey Bunny, which is one of those ones that's tied to Probstein allegedly, won some items. So if it was a test account, like I said earlier, why did he in fact win items? You've had people actually win items, pay for it, and now are waiting to be refunded. This whole thing stinks, and the volume is just insane. And, you know, I sort of didn't get a chance to highlight it, but towards the end of this forum post, you actually had another update from the original poster at somewhere over here where they found even more suspicious accounts, some of which are tied to other, alleged scammers from the space over the years. This is just crazy to me. And obviously, we can't reperform this data extraction, so we can't determine whether this is true for ourselves. But people have independently reached out to me after my call to arms in that last video and said the data that's been provided looks legitimate. It looks like it does do exactly what this person has explained. Now, you could still have somebody trying to cause damage to Rick, so they've gone ahead and made a fake data set. But to me, that's, a little bit out there. And I sort of didn't emphasize that enough in my last video, so I do apologize. But the reason why I think it's out there is because by now I would have expected Rick or his team to come out and squash this whole thing. And you could say, well, it's just a random forum post, nobody knows about it. But, Sports Card Radio have been making crazy posts about this. They've made a live stream. My video got a ton of views. You've seen other people talk about this and got a ton of views. They would know about this by now, right? People have been talking about it on Instagram. Somebody would have told Rick and his team, hey, this thing was leaked. You need to get on the front foot. But that's not happened yet. And I would have thought that would have happened by now if it was in fact fake. So obviously we still can't confirm whether this is legitimate or not. But if the data is legit, Rick is done, because there's no hiding from that if the data is legitimate. So let's sort of sit back and wait to see what happens. Again, if anybody's out there that has any more information, please reach out. I'm happy to talk about this and deep dive into it. For those of you that already did, the 3 of you, I thank you. Obviously, we cannot prove this for myself. I've tried to go back in and do it for myself, but I cannot. So at the end of the day, these things are still allegations, but all these questions need to be asked, and it's just been deafening. The silence has been deafening from your hobby heroes. I'm shocked that no one has talked about it. It scares me because it makes me think how pervasive this is. Obviously, we've talked about this a lot in the past. We've talked about how poorly designed some of these companies are and their processes, and these mistakes consistently happen. So I don't have a whole lot of faith in how this industry operates. I think you've got people making money hand over fist, and they're looking to rip people off every chance they get, at least from an establishment perspective. But no one's really pressuring or highlighting or talking about it. It makes me really uncomfortable, and I think this will just highlight a really pervasive issue in this space, because I'm curious to see how long this was going on for. If this is legit, how long was it going on for on eBay? Obviously, those allegations were there for a number of years, but what does it actually mean? And just quickly, I've also heard a rumor that Rick's going to be back on eBay within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Somebody shared a DM with me from somebody that was allegedly tied to Rick, and that's what they said. So, I don't know, guys. Take with it what you will. Make up your own mind, as always. This is just an opinion. These are all allegations, but this does not look good, and I'm furious that people aren't talking about it. So anyway, I'm repeating myself. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.